The movie begins with a group of children returning home in a high school bus. A boy called Jeffrey Dahmer is seen staring outside the window and spots a man jogging outside. He is immediately drawn to the unknown man and gets an overwhelming feeling. When Dahmer is dropped off home, he waits outside his house just to watch the jogger pass by. Later that day, Dahmer is carefully carrying out a black bag in front of the house, when two teen boys approach him. They curiously ask Dahmer what is inside the bag. Dahmer reveals it is a dead cat. He tells the teens he is planning on removing all the bones by dissolving the body in chemicals. Dahmer's father is a chemist and so he has access to various chemicals to use for his experiment. Upon hearing this, the boys don't believe him and they are asked to follow Dahmer to his father's shed. While Dahmer pours acid into the jar, the boys tease him and tell him the chemical he is using is only water, which really infuriates him. Just to prove to the boys he uses real chemicals, Dahmer steps outside and smashes a jar that he had prepared months before with a rotting animal inside. The boys are absolutely disgusted with the foul smell. They call Dahmer a freak before quickly leaving. In the next scene we are introduced to Dahmer's family over dinner. Lionel, his father, is a college chemist and his mother Joyce is a housewife. Joyce struggles with drug addiction and mental health issues, which has caused a turbulent relationship between them. We are then introduced to Dahmer's younger brother, David. Next, Dahmer's parents are seen bickering over dinner, which is a normal everyday occurrence. One day, Jeffrey asks his father if he has stronger chemicals to use for his experiments. Lionel, who is aware of Jeffrey's hobby, tells him that he would like to see him being more social. The next morning Jeffrey is at school. He is often seen sitting alone because of his weird behavior. One day in biology class, he steals a dead animal that has been preserved in a glass jar for an experiment. His weird interest in dissecting animals along with his antisocial behavior makes him feel different from other students. Later that evening, Lionel returns home from work and is concerned to see Jeffrey spending all his time in the shed working on dead animals. In a rage, he begins emptying the shed out. Lionel then tells Jeffrey he must put a stop to all of this. He is told to go out to make friends. The next day, Jeffrey tries to make an effort to talk to his classmates, but as expected nobody talks to him. Later that day, Jeffrey is seen looking sad as he waits on the road outside the school. He sees the same man jogging again. Something comes over Jeffrey and he instantly feels happy and excited to see the stranger again. Jeffrey starts to work out, but he cannot control the strange obsessions running through his mind. The following week in school, a teacher notices that Jeffrey isn't paying attention and asks him a question in front of the whole class. Jeffrey is put on the spot and freezes. He doesn't know what to say. When he finally responds, he does so with a funny accent and his colleagues burst out laughing. Surprised by this reaction, Jeffrey believes he can gain popularity by being funny. After the lesson, he starts making strange noises in the school hallway. Suddenly, he drops to the floor pretending to have a seizure. A bunch of students surround him and begin to laugh and his plan works. Dahmer continues to act like a crazy man on a daily basis just to make everyone laugh. A few days later, Jeffrey is thrilled when a group of teenagers, Durf, Mike and Neil, ask to join him for lunch in the canteen. They soon become close friends and the group use Jeffrey's comedy acts all around the school. Later, the boys are seen running down the school hallway like zombies, making strange loud noises. Jeffrey starts to become popular amongst the students at the school and his social life begins to improve. In the next scene, Dahmer is out fishing at a nearby lake with his friends. The boys all agree to catch a fish and throw it back into the lake immediately. After some time, Jeffrey is the first to catch a fish and Mike instructs him to cut it loose. Jeffrey doesn't listen and instead, he aggressively stabs the fish and he appears to really enjoy it. Mike and Durf are freaked out. They ask why he would do such a thing. Dahmer quickly apologizes and says he was just curious to see how the insides of a fish look. Days pass by and we see Dahmer hiding behind some bushes. It is then revealed he is stalking the jogger that passes his house every day. Dahmer is infatuated with the man and his strange behavior is getting noticeably worse. Later on, Jeffrey learns that the male jogger is Dr. Matthews, a well-known physician in the area and a friend of Durf. That same evening, Jeffrey returns home to find his mom and dad bickering. When Lionel sits outside and pours himself a glass of whiskey, Jeffrey joins him. Later, when his father is looking away, Jeffrey runs off with the bottle and consumes it all. From this day on, Jeffrey regularly drinks alcohol and one day he even arrives at school drunk. The next day, Jeffrey goes on a school trip to DC where the students will be staying overnight. Jeffrey has been given a room to share with Charlie, the only black guy in his class. While they are in the room alone together, Jeffrey curiously asks Charlie if his insides are the same color as his. As expected, Charlie is offended by his question and then goes on to ignore him for the whole trip. The next evening, the students return to school from their trip. Lionel collects Jeffrey but gives him some bad news. His father reveals that he is separating from his mother. As expected, he doesn't take this well and he starts feeling depressed and miserable. One day he fakes being ill so that he can get an appointment with Dr. Matthews, the doctor he has been stalking for many weeks. At the clinic, Jeffrey is happy to finally meet his crush. Dr. Matthews becomes uncomfortable during the hernia examination when he notices that Jeffrey is aroused. When Jeffrey returns home, he goes into his room and pleasures himself thinking about his encounter. Later, Jeffrey is feeling confused about his sexuality. Coupled with his parents getting a divorce, he has never felt so low in his life. The following day, Jeffrey is horrified to hear his parents fighting over the custody of him and his brother. The breakup is having a negative impact on him and he turns to alcohol and is often absent from school. One day, Mike, Neil and Durf are out for recess when a group of boys approach them. They ask if Jeffrey has ditched them for being so boring. Durf gets annoyed and assures them they're still friends. The next time Durf sees Jeffrey, he even hands over money to Jeffrey so that he carries out the embarrassing prank. When the weekend arrives, Jeffrey has been talked into doing the prank. A bunch of schoolboys meet at the mall and Jeffrey starts his seizure prank. All the students laugh and some even record the whole thing. Jeffrey continues for some time just to impress his friends, but after making a complete fool of himself, he realizes that his friends are using him and are actually laughing at him. When Jeffrey returns home, his mother reveals that his father has won custody of him, including the house. In the next scene, Jeffrey is seen hiding in the bushes with a bat. With all the changes going on at home, his emotions are all over the place. He waits for Dr. Matthews and gets ready to attack him. Fortunately, Dr. Matthews doesn't turn up, leaving Jeffrey very frustrated. He begins to lash out at the tree until his bat breaks. Sometime later, two students are seen walking through the woods. They come across a deceased dog with all its internal organs hanging out. It appears as though Jeffrey has something to do with this. Meanwhile, Jeffrey and his friends are talking about the upcoming prom. When Dahmer tells them he wants to go, Mike immediately makes fun of him and tells him no one would want to go out with a freak like him. Although this really hurts his feelings, Jeffrey doesn't lose hope and later asks a new student, Bridget, if she would go with him. As expected, the freshman declines his offer, but this doesn't stop Jeffrey. He lies to her and says it would make her very popular if she went to the prom with a senior. Bridget eventually agrees and tells him she will go with him. The next evening, Jeffrey arrives at the prom with Bridget. His friends are surprised to see him with a girl, and when it's time to have their first dance, it is very clear Jeffrey is not interested in Bridget or any other girl for that matter. Jeffrey begins to feel uncomfortable and unable to interact, so he quickly makes an escape. We then see him sitting outside in a car eating alone. In the next scene, Dahmer sees his mom packing her belongings as she gets ready to leave the family home. Jeffrey is devastated to see his mom taking David with her. He heads back inside without saying goodbye. Feeling overwhelmed and emotional, he has a mental breakdown. A few months later, Jeffrey graduates from school and his proud father Lionel hands over his car key as a gift to him. However, instead of being very excited, Jeffrey is sad. It is clear that he is missing his mother and younger brother who did not attend the ceremony. That evening, Jeffrey is walking alone down a dark road when his friend Durf sees him. He pulls up and offers Jeffrey a lift home. Durf notices that Jeffrey is not okay and sees blood stains on Jeffrey's hands and becomes suspicious. He questions Jeffrey, but he quickly brushes it off and says he was painting. When they approach the house, Jeffrey says his father is out and invites him in. Jeffrey starts to act strangely and follows Durf up close around the house. Durf is uncomfortable and feels very worried about his friend's behavior. He doesn't stay long and quickly leaves the house. Jeffrey quickly follows him out and grabs a baseball bat. He is about to attack Durf from behind but suddenly stops. When Durf turns on the car headlights, he sees Jeffrey standing there with a baseball bat, which freaks him out. That night, Jeffrey cracks open a bottle of alcohol and consumes it all. He feels like he is going out of his mind, thinking that he has turned into some kind of sick monster consumed by impulsive and sociopathic thoughts. He is unable to control himself. The satisfaction he feels for killing and dismembering living things is getting worse. The next day, Dahmer heads out in his car and sees a hitchhiker called Stephen Hicks. Dahmer offers him a ride. Dahmer's sadistic behavior have taken over, and it appears that Stephen is going to be his first victim, and the movie ends there. If you want to see more of such movie recaps, hit the subscribe button to become part of our movie family.